I want to talk today about the ancestors, but I want to let you know something first. It's raining today, so you'll probably hear a pattern in the background of crazy wind and raindrops as I speak. Now, the ancestor. I want to talk about the ancestor, the aspect of our lives that is becoming very, very important. I want to talk about it because it's not going to come up necessarily in the cultural paradigm. It'll come up through your friends or through discussion of shamanic ideas. It will come up, some people call it New Age, psychedelia, But for right now, I want to talk about it as an element that's becoming quite strong in our lives, and it will continue to become that way this year and beyond. And the reason why this is because as we go more inward, we discover that there's other voices in us, not necessarily the kind that keep us crazy and wild, because those voices are often from the culture, basically television shows or people attacking you for where you are in your life or how much you have or how much you don't have. I'm not talking about those voices. I'm actually talking about the voices that comfort you when you get very down, when you feel like you can't go on. There's obviously times where those voices are not there. The ancestor is an element of our psyche and our world that has been around for millennium in all cultures around the world, and it's an element that is awakening because of much of the great loss we're experiencing right now. You see it in the weather affecting so much of our lives, which is really Mother Nature, and it is her way of speaking to us because we have been very removed from her. And without that relationship, what are we relating to? I want to go on with this, but I want to say the ancestor becomes more alive in your life when you lose someone. Because when you lose someone, you go through a huge grieving process. And the grieving process individually connects you to a grid of many other people who've experienced the same thing, which is really all of us, because we are passing through. But that grief connects you to a much larger grief. And as I said in the earlier video that I did, that's becoming stronger and stronger. Most people, 1 in 2 to 3 people has lost somebody in the last year alone that's very close to them and often very sudden. And you begin to think about a lot of other things besides yourself, but also the world around you and maybe how unhappy it is. I'll go back to the weather actually, maybe to lighten what I've been saying. The weather this winter in the northern hemisphere is having quite an effect on our movement, our thoughts, our relationships, what we can handle, what we can eat. But it's also making us to a place where we find our still point, because we don't control the weather. We control our weather. And our relationship to the external versus the internal is becoming very highlighted by all of this. So when the weather's bad, obviously we tend to stay in. And you really have 2 options to stay in. You can Fill your mind up with as much as possible to ignore what feels like incredible isolation. Or you can be in the company of people, of course. Or you can take the isolation and use it. Use it in a sense of meditation, rest, dream work, or stillness. In the old days, especially in Ireland, the ancient monks, or trainees into the mystic ways, people here often call them druids, pagans, whatever word you want to use, it's still very much alive. I know we have to tend to think that if a book isn't written about it or there's no proof that it doesn't exist, but of course it does, because ideas are always alive. They never die. They just are spoken again through people all over the world throughout history. And what I want to say is that during the winter time in the northern hemisphere, when a druid, we'll call it a druid for now, was in training, they would stay for often many days in complete darkness. And actually their day would begin when the night began. So that brief time of light was a time of sleep, actually. And the darkness was when the day began, when the adventure began, when the activity began. And in a real sense, when the visions began. In darkness, when you're in it for a period of time, there is a light. Try it. Close the door, turn off all the lights, no candle, just yourself. And you will realize there is a light. And it's the light inside yourself. And your eyes will adjust. But that origin of darkness is visionary. The mind moves into a very, very ancient mode. A mode that's locked into our DNA. It's so locked into our DNA that I read somewhere recently that most of existence, human existence, has been underground in caves. Our sojourn out into the light, being out in the light all the time, is really only a recent phenomenon, especially the busyness of it, using up as much light as possible before it gets dark, avoidance of using the dark, of having relationship to it. But I'll go back to the training of the druid in his darkness and his visions. Those visions often were visions of himself. For a period of time they were probably very personal. But as time went by, the visions began to connect them to obviously other worlds, but also to their tribe, and then beyond their tribe. So there was a growth of beyond the individual. And a safety began to be built up. That in my own darkness, in your own darkness, you could set something right. I want to say right because it's separate from the culture giving you permission to say it is right. Because now we're getting into truth, personal truth. The truth that belongs only to you, but the deep truth. And the deep truth, the one deep inside you after you've spent some time working in meditation and working, envisioning by night, opens up a whole world. And that world, once it opens, can never go back. It's meant to stay open. And the opening is a road. is a road that we're ready to walk down. All the busyness, all the distraction, which is taking you off a very personal, individual path that's very important for the whole. And the whole is all of us. You know, we're all connected. This machine, the internet, has shown us a brief glimpse of that. But the next level is going to be through our feelings. And when you're still, and when you're meditating, or when you're visioning, that's the first thing that gets still. You suddenly realize the mind is crazy, wild, is driving you mad. But you have to be conscious. What are you putting in there? How many magazines can you read? How many books can you read? How many TV shows? How many films? What happens in the emptiness? Does it turn very dark? Can you not bear it? But there's infinite possibilities when it's empty. And I refer to culture a lot in everything I talk about because culture fills up the potential inside you. It distracts it. It moves it out of its goals. I don't want to say goals because that seems so business-like. But it moves you away from your purpose. Big word, right? I'm not sure how many dogmas or religions present that for you. I see them mainly asking you to serve someone else. But if you serve the goal inside you, or the vision inside you, or the dream inside you, a lot drops away. A lot. Most of it actually becomes very, very simple. The complex becomes useless, and you'd rather move from moment to moment. The eternal in moment to moment, which is actually a beautiful, still point. And we all have those experiences. No matter how much chaos is in our lives throughout the day, there is always potential for that to happen. But I'll go back to what I originally started this video with. The ancestor. What's the importance of the ancestor in everything I've just said? When you take the journey, when you walk away, when you decide to get rid of things in your life you don't need anymore, people you don't need, stuff you don't need, you meet yourself. But you're not alone. You're not alone when you're walking that road. There are others with you. And those others speak to you in so many amazing ways. And I'm not going to say they only happen by meditating at night in the winter. They happen obviously when you go for a walk, when you're just out. Your mind is downloading so much already beyond what you download from the internet and from the computer. It's downloading an entire history of existence moment to moment. And that's heavy. That's why we need breaks from everything. I mean everything. And this is that moment. This is that moment where you walk away a little bit, take a step back. And when you do, you're going to see some pretty wonderful stuff. You're also going to meet people you haven't seen in a long time. You're also going to begin to have relationship with what I call the other world. Many people call it the other world. But a world beyond you and a world beyond what is safely presented for you. But it's going to take some effort. Your effort. The ancestor is in you, in me, and it's wisdom. And wisdom comes from experience. And it's now time for us to seek seek experience, an experience very quiet, in a way, and sheltered. So I did this talk today about that part. Take some time to acknowledge the quiet part of your soul and see what's there, and realize there's a whole dialogue going on, a beautiful dialogue that has a lot of guidance in it.